Okay, let's dive right in. We're going to try and unpack one of the most dynamic, complex, and honestly, misunderstood nations on Earth, Nigeria. Because to really get the Nigeria of today, you absolutely have to understand its story, a story of incredible highs and truly devastating lows. First, just to get a sense of the scale here, Nigeria is a powerhouse. It is Africa's most populous country, a vibrant nation with over 220 million people. Just think about that for a second. That is a staggering amount of human capital, energy, and potential, all packed into one place. And it's not just about people. Economically, it's an absolute giant. Fueled by vast resources, we're talking massive oil reserves. Nigeria has the largest economy on the entire continent. It is a major, major player on the global stage. And culturally, its influence is just immense. I mean, you've heard of Hollywood, you've heard of Bollywood, but have you heard of Nollywood? It's the second largest film industry on the planet. Nigerian music, art, literature, it's shaping global culture. Sounds pretty incredible so far, doesn't it? But, and this is a huge but, here is the paradox. For all of that strength, Nigeria also grapples with just enormous challenges. You have widespread poverty right alongside incredible wealth. Corruption is this massive drain on the nation's potential. And for millions of people, insecurity and collapsing infrastructure are just a daily reality. So that's the big question, right? How can all of this be true at the exact same time? Well, the answer, as we're about to see, is buried deep, deep in Nigeria's history. To find that answer, we've got to rewind way back. We're talking long before the modern headlines, even before the name Nigeria ever existed. Now, what's so fascinating here is that this shows you this is not a young country in any sense of the word. I mean, civilizations like the Nok were working with advanced iron technology over 3,000 years ago. You had great empires, huge kingdoms like the Yoruba and Benin empires that rose and fell here. This was a land of sophisticated societies, trade, and culture for millennia. And then everything changed. The arrival of Europeans fundamentally and violently reshaped the destiny of this entire region. It's a brutal part of the story. Starting back in the 15th century, the transatlantic slave trade began, and the coast of what would one day become Nigeria turned into one of the largest slave exporting regions in the world. Millions, millions of people were stolen, a devastating loss that left scars for generations. Okay, this next number, you have to remember this because it explains almost everything that comes next. 250. Before colonization, this region was not one unified place. It was this incredible, vibrant mosaic of over 250 distinct ethnic groups, each with its own language, its own culture, its own way of governing. And this is exactly what happened next. In 1900, Britain took all of those 250-plus groups, people like the largely Muslim House of Fulani in the north and the predominantly Christian Yoruba and Igbo in the south, and just mashed them all together into a single artificial state. And the goal? It wasn't to build a cohesive nation. No way. It was all about creating a territory that was easier to control and easier to extract resources from. This one act is the root of so many of Nigeria's future tensions. So this brings us to independence. When Nigeria finally won its freedom, it didn't get a clean slate. Nope. Instead, it inherited all the deep cracks that its colonial creators had left behind. I mean, you can just imagine the celebration and hope in 1960. It must have been electric. But that hope was pretty quickly slammed by a harsh reality. All those ethnic and religious fault lines that the British had either ignored or, in many cases, exploited, they started to break wide open almost immediately. And just 7 years after independence, those cracks erupted into a devastating civil war. The eastern region, which was primarily home to the Igbo people, tried to break away and form its own nation, Biafra. The conflict that followed was just horrific. Famine, fighting, it killed over 1 million people. It was a national trauma born directly from those colonial divisions. After the war, Nigeria got trapped in this really vicious cycle, which you can see right here. First, you get the military coups. One after another, dictators seized power for nearly 30 years. And at the exact same time, Nigeria strikes oil. A massive boom makes it a huge global exporter. But this became what's called a resource curse. Instead of building the nation, all that immense wealth was just siphoned off, funding decades of staggering corruption under military rule. Then, finally, in 1999, military rule ends. A fragile democracy is restored. It was a monumental step forward, for sure. But all those deep-seated problems, the corruption, the division, they didn't just vanish overnight. Which brings us right back to where we started. Now we can actually connect these historical threads to that paradox we talked about at the beginning. See, when you look at it this way, it all starts to make sense. These two columns aren't a contradiction. They're the consequences of the exact same story. The oil that makes Nigeria a major producer, that's the same oil that fueled the corruption that entrenched poverty. The incredible human diversity that makes it a cultural powerhouse, that also contains the ethnic fault lines that can lead to insecurity. And that's the key takeaway. Nigeria's modern challenges are not random. They are the direct legacy of its forced colonial creation, the trauma of its civil war, and the curse of its oil wealth. And its strengths? Well, those are the legacy of its ancient civilizations and the incredible, unbelievable resilience of its people. And so we end with this. The story of Nigeria is not over, not by a long shot. It's a nation that is constantly wrestling with its history while trying to forge a new path. And knowing this history isn't just about understanding the problems. It's about appreciating the incredible potential that still remains and asking, what will it take to finally unlock it?